Good evening, everybody. Let's begin with our motivation. So every day we're bombarded by bad news, really horrific sometimes, many tragedies. It can lead to a lot of anxiety and discouragement. It really leads us to question what progress we actually have made in this modern world. We know that we've made some progress in science and technology, and those things have contributed to our comfort and well-being. But these really do little to bring about our true happiness. To bring about our true happiness, we really need to strengthen our inner values. Those ways of living that bring about happiness and harmony. And so one source of learning about how to bring about true happiness is the precious Garland that we've been studying, that Venerable Children's been teaching on, and that we've been reviewing when she's traveling. And so tonight, as we go through these last questions on Quiz 7, we're learning about the causes and effects of high rebirth, highest good, creating the causes for happiness, and also looking at the causes of lower rebirth, what we need to avoid. And so let's try our best to put these teachings into practice and bring them into our hearts so that we can live with these inner values that will bring about our happiness, bring about our well-being. And when we do that, then we have a lot of space in our minds and hearts so that we can develop all of our good qualities, our bodhicitta, so that we can progress on the path and become fully awakened, so that we can really benefit all beings in the most excellent way. And so let's rejoice that we have this opportunity to review these teachings. So, we're going through the book, the teachings that Venerable Children gave. This book just came out recently that Venerable Children published. It's she edited. It's the commentary that Khensur Jampa Tekchok gave on Nagarjuna's precious Garland. And so in the previous 2 weeks, Venerable Tarpa finished up on the questions pertaining to Section 5, which was on creating the causes for happiness. Now the next 5 questions pertain to taming attachment. And so, as a review, attachment is exaggerating the qualities of something and then grasping after it, and the result of that is suffering, always. And that's hard for us to see, but that is the result of that. And so if we don't look at these actions that cause lower rebirth, very hard to do any progress on this path, So it's really important for us to look to see. And of course the Buddha so clearly laid out, he just observed and noticed that when we do these actions, we get positive results. We do these actions, we get negative results. And so it's just the cause and effect that we're looking at. So we begin with question number 8. What are the disadvantages of intoxicants? So first of all, which verse are we working with in this question? Somebody know?
So I looked at, I had verse 146,
Mm-hmm.
and it reads, "From intoxicants come the world's disdain, your own failure and the loss of your wealth. Confused, you do what you should not. Therefore, always refrain from intoxicants."
Yeah. So what are some disadvantages of intoxicants? What do we know about that from personal experience or what we've read? Yeah, a great deal.
Personal experience is after you become intoxicated, you do all sorts of things that you, in your right mind, would never do. And then, of course, the next day, either when you go to work or you go and hang out with your friends, everybody's kind of, elbowing and kind of rolling their eyes. So your reputation really does go down the tubes because, first of all, you don't remember. Second of all, you're behaving really inappropriately and creating all sorts of destructive actions of body and speech. And then there's just a lot of disdain, even by not only just your peers, but also people who are much wiser than you that are kind of sad and disappointed seeing how you're behaving. So, reputation for sure.
What else?
I think it inhibits your growth both socially and spiritually, and wastes a lot of time that could be time well spent.
Yeah. Anything else?
It destroys family life. So if the parents are drinking, the children are getting neglected emotionally. It influences the work life. The people might lose their jobs. They are not reliable anymore.
I wish I would have asked myself this question many years ago, but it didn't. And so you have to wonder, we're not in control of our mind right now, and we're not even drunk.
Yeah.
We're not in control of our mind, and we're Buddhist practitioners. So why would we consider for a moment that drinking would enhance things? And we were just following social norms. Everyone does it. Everyone I knew drank. But yeah, just all the reasons given so far. And what a profound waste of time and money and a life, a precious human life.
Yeah, this someone online comment that like your thinking mind is clouded, impulse control is weakened, lose inhibitions, and we waste time and resources and lie and cheat to procure more those intoxicants.
Yep. Yeah, that about covers it, doesn't it? Yeah. Xiaoyan?
I think a lot of people, when they commit a crime, they were drunk.
Yeah. So we do outreach for inmates in prison, and I think without fail, I can't remember any inmate that I've written to or conversed with that drugs or alcohol was not involved in their ending up in prison. And that's such a tragedy. Anything from being drunk and driving and killing someone on the street to being, drunk or high and not being able to manage their emotions and getting so angry that they kill someone. And, 4 or 5 seconds of some kind of behavior and their entire life is destroyed. So it's quite a tragedy, actually. Quite a tragedy. Yeah, not only their life, but whoever they harmed and all the families and, So drug and alcohol abuse affects many, many, many people. It's never just a solitary action. It affects many people. I thought to talk a little tonight about currently that this country here is dealing with such a increase in especially prescription drug use and people getting so hooked on these pain relieving medicines, the opioids. And there's a few statistics. There's a lot in the media right now about this. There are literally towns that are suffering so much from this, with people overdosing and, families destroyed and torn apart because of addiction to prescription pain medicine. So here's a few statistics. In 2013, this is an old statistic, but nonetheless, in 2013, an estimated 24.6 million Americans aged 12 or older, that's 9.4% of the population then, had used an illicit drug in the past month. That's a lot of people. And that's up from 8.3% in 2002. In 2015, the opioid epidemic killed more than 33,000 people. Overdose deaths were nearly equal to the number of deaths from car crashes. And in 2015, for the first time, deaths from heroin alone surpassed gun homicides. So that puts it in perspective, doesn't it? My gosh. And of course, the tragedy is that although millions of Americans suffer from either alcoholism or addiction to illegal and legal drugs, only a fraction of those are being treated. There was also an interesting article in the Times a while back. The title was "Long-Term Opioid Use Could Depend on the Doctor Who First Prescribed It." So they did this large study with Medicare patients, actually, so older adults, 65 or older. And they looked at 375,000 patients from that had similar complaints that went to the emergency room in several thousand hospitals across the U.S. And they took this data from 2008 to 2011. And it found that the prescribing patterns of whichever physician they encountered were an important factor in their future opioid use. So overall, researchers estimated that 1 out of every 48 patients who were sent home with a prescription, 1 would end up using opioids long term, which researchers defined at least 180 days of medication over a year. And of course, for this particular population, 65 or older, having these medicines on board creates confusion in the mind, falls, terrible constipation, lack of appetite, dehydration, and addiction. And so they found that the doctors that they identified as high-intensity prescribers sent 1 in 4 patients home with opioids. And the low-intensity prescribers gave opioids to 1 in 14 patients. And so the patients who saw a high-intensity prescriber were 30% more likely to become long-term users. So, pretty important how things are being prescribed here. And so it really puts the burden on the people in the emergency rooms about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And so, and all of these physicians, they weren't necessarily prescribing doses that were higher or, longer lasting or anything. It's just the initial, getting the drug then started this process of getting addicted. let's see what else. So I guess what they found was that there's a big disparity in prescribing patterns. And so there's no consensus about what complaint we come into the ER with is reasonable to give an opioid. So opioids are narcotic medicine like OxyContin, Vicodin, Narco, those kinds of oral meds. OxyContin, which is a very strong opioid that is time release, so it lasts over a long period of time. And traditionally, like years ago, before the 80s, these medicines were used for serious surgeries, like, really major surgeries in the hospital, and cancer and end of life pain relief. It wasn't given to just, going to the ER for this or that, fall down or bruises or whatever. And why that changed over the years is because there was some research that said that these drugs weren't so dangerous. And then the pharmaceuticals got a hold of that, and then they started pushing this to the physicians, and then it became, kind of commonplace. So I guess I've been thinking a little bit about what motivates people to abuse drugs and alcohol. And looking at it from a Buddhist perspective, I think since we have been so conditioned to always look outward to identify where our problems are coming from, and when we hold that view, which is we've all been conditioned to that. When we hold that view, then that brings such suffering because we really can't change anything. When the problem is out there, I can, do a whole lot of things, but it's not going to solve that problem generally, And so then I think it kind of follows when you have that view, when there is such pain, either emotionally or physically, we just naturally look outward then again for relief, something outside. And so that's why these are so attractive, to people, And of course, the paradigm with most Western medicine is that, we give you the pill to fix it. And so the motivation might be, coming from a compassionate place, but it isn't going to result in a fix of a problem at all. And I think, if you take one of these medicines, one of these opioids, you can see how it separates you from any kind of discomfort you're having, physically and mentally, So it has some attraction to it if you view everything from, all my problems are outside. It's not here, it's out there. And so I think for us as consumers, it's really important to be proactive when we are in a situation where these opioids are being prescribed to us. Because, if you have surgery or you break a bone or something, they are going to be offered. Yeah. And so one of the things I do is when a pain relief is offered to me, when I'm in that system, I will ask them what the side effects are, even though I know. And I do that so that they kind of wake up. Because, when you do that kind of work, it's just one after another, and you get kind of just rote. You just do, and, next, because there's a million waiting, and next. And so this kind of gets the person involved in thinking, oh, what am I doing here? What are the side effects? And then I also ask, what are the other options? What are the other options? And, sometimes they have other ones, sometimes they don't, but there are many other options, Sometimes as simple as ice and elevation or heat, sometimes physical therapy instead, of medicine. Sometimes a combination of two non-addicting anti-inflammatories is enough that you don't need to go into the narcotic, And then when they write the prescription, I ask them how many they're writing for often, because they always overwrite. I mean, how many people have bottles of pain medicine in their cabinets because they didn't use them all, because they didn't need them all, And so these things are sitting around, and then you have teenage kids around or whatever, and then, so it's not so helpful, actually. And luckily now with this epidemic in this country, it's coming to where the prescribers are getting a little more aware of what they're doing, and they're not being so free to write all of these, But we have to be proactive from our own side. We have to protect ourselves. We have to protect ourselves. And of course, there's many things in that are playing in our healing. It's not just pain medicine or not, there's many things, but to take responsibility for what we're putting in our bodies is really important. Instead of just deferring, they must know. They're the ones that know, Well, they have some information, but we know about ourselves. So we have to take that into consideration. And then treatment is, things are just starting to turn around the treatment thing. There's a recent report from the Surgeon General that 1 in 7 people in the United States is expected to develop a substance use disorder at some point. 1 in 7. 1 in 7. But as of now, only 1 in 10 will receive treatment. But it really calls for a cultural change and understanding that addiction is not a character flaw, which is, in this country, that's kind of how it's seen, And the Surgeon General says it's time to change how we view addiction, not as a moral failing, but something that must be treated with skill, urgency, and compassion. The way we address this crisis is a test for America. And so among public health researchers, there's a broad agreement about what's needed. So access to addiction treatment and medications, tighter regulation of prescription opioids, widespread distribution of naloxone, which is a fast-acting antidote when people are OD'd. You can give them this drug and they wake up, so it counters that. Needle exchanges or supervised injection centers while people are getting into the system to get treatment. And then law enforcement efforts to reduce the supply of heroin and illicitly manufactured fentanyl, which is another, this is a very strong opioid that in the past only was used as an anesthetic. And now they've put it in pill form and they are giving it, or also patches. And many people are ODing on this. And the bulk of which they think is coming from China and Mexico. So there's a lot that needs to be done. And then, when you think about in this country, the health care with the Affordable Care Act, that was so important because then people that were addicted could get treatment for the first time ever, because it was part of the insurance. And so many people have started to get treatment now. And if they axe that insurance, then we're going to be back to people not having any options when they get hooked on this stuff, if they don't have resources. And most people don't, Even if you start out with resources, you get hooked on this stuff. You use all your resources up to get more stuff. So it's a big problem, for sure. But I think it starts with us, everyone. We don't know. You don't know if you're going to get addicted to something if you have that, You either karmic predisposition or, genetic predisposition, however you want to think about it. So we have to be careful and mindful about what we're doing. Any comments or anything on what I've said so far?
Just a very personal sharing. My mother was addicted to not these very high ones, these opiums or something like
Opioids.
that, but pain medicine, strong pain medicine, because of migraines. And I was a toddler. I was 3-4 years old, going to kindergarten, and I know that when she took the medicine, I saw a change in her, that she kind of raised up and she was more present and such. So I thought this is a happy pill. And then I took a happy pill and took it with me to kindergarten.
Oh my gosh.
And shared it. Only one day. I said, here's a happy pill.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh.
Also, a personal story. I been a chronic migraine sufferer for several decades, and sometime during my treatment, a doctor prescribed Vicodin.
Yeah.
And I was on Vicodin for a while, and at some point I realized that I was taking Vicodin even when I didn't have a headache. And I also realized that when I was coming off of the Vicodin, I was in a very, I was very prone to anger, but like really horrible, screaming at my family, and so I realized that this is not really good for me, and it's not really taking care of the pain either.
Yeah, just masks.
Yeah, it's just sort of a mask on the pain. So I stopped taking it, and then I actually went to the doctor and I said, please don't ever prescribe to me anything that is any
addictive.
Do this.
Yeah.
And so I switched to over-the-counter medication.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I've treated.
Yep.
There was also another point in time when, because I've ended up at the emergency room several times, and there was one time they actually gave me morphine for the pain.
Morphine, yeah.
Yeah, and then after I had, it was horrible. It was just the most horrible experience.
Yeah.
And then some subsequent trips to the emergency room, I actually had to say to the doctor, please don't give me morphine. I hate it. It's just horrible.
Yeah.
But there is that push by, at least at the time, with the physicians to get you out of the emergency room as quickly as possible by wherever.
Means
necessary.
Yeah, that's the broken system part.
Yeah, there's some comments online. This one is pretty personal. My brother lost his family, his house, literally homeless. His job is in serious debt. The trust others had in him, and now is in with a criminal record. He might lose his freedom. It's heartbreaking, and all because he just has to stop the thoughts going through his mind. And addiction are complicated with the added component of physical as well as mental addiction cravings.
Yeah. There's no good outcome to these things. And it takes a lot of wisdom to figure out how to treat pain without, because we end up going, like everything, we go from one extreme to the other. So we get scared about getting addicted, and so then we're suffering in pain and we won't take anything, and then we don't heal well. So, there needs to be a lot of wisdom around this, and somebody having the big view, kind of, so that we can heal when we need to. Because if we're in, excruciating pain, we're not going to heal very well. So, it's a complicated process, not so easy. Okay, so now let's go to question number 9. We're going to switch gears totally now. So this question, this question says, why does Nagarjuna go into such detail about the foulness of the body of someone we're sexually attracted to? And there were a zillion of, he really covered this. I have page and a half, front and back, of the verses that covered this one. Yeah. So there's a lot. Maybe I'll just read a few just to get a flavor of what he's talking about. And the first thing to know, too, is these texts were written mostly for monastics often, or for males, and so it highlights the foulness of the female body. But guess what? All bodies are foul. So we have to keep that in mind. Yeah. Yeah. So it starts on verse 148. Most attachment to women comes from the belief that women's bodies are pure, but in actuality there is no purity in a woman's body at all, or a man's. Her mouth is a vessel of impurity, with putrid saliva and gunk between her teeth. Her nose is a pot of snot, phlegm, and mucus, and her eyes contain eye slime and tears. Her torso is a container of, let's go to the male now. His torso is a container of excrement holding urine, the lungs, liver, and such. The confused do not see that a man is such. Thus they lust after his body. So like that. So it's very descriptive, very, you know exactly what they're talking about. And it's kind of shocking, when you read at least, at first it is. Is that the case for most? Yeah, it's like, whoa, what? Yeah, yep. So why does he go into such detail? What's the reason for this? Yeah, Rebecca.
The whole way that our society relates to the body is to sexualize it and to glorify it as an object of pleasure. So all our social conditionings, looking at it another way, so to really get us to see things how they really are, then it has to kind of go through it again and again and again.
Yeah.
There was a piece in here that said, stop for a moment and consider everything that's involved when you sexually desire someone. So I was kind of going back to those the good old days. That the things that I used to do to get my object of a desire, I mean, I was just the strategizing and the jealousy when I thought that somebody else was interfering. The pride when I got my object of desire, I would just kind of strut around like, just a lot of plumage because I had my partner with me. And of course, just thinking that this was the source of my complete and total happiness, is having this being and having the body of this being. And but the mind was totally obsessed and had no idea what was really there.
What it really was, and what was, and then of course, what's the end result?
Disappointment and just
suffering, pain, yeah.
And then finally revulsion, because you can only sustain that kind of attraction to a body for so long. That's the only thing that it's riding on.
In the end of the origin story for the monastic vow concerning celibacy, after somebody goes back and he's with his wife again, and when he comes back, the Buddha tells him, "Oh, foolish man," and I'm paraphrasing, but he says pretty much, "Didn't I tell you that desire is the root of all the suffering in samsara?" And I think that's a good thing to remember in this.
Yeah, there's some comments online to really keep one from becoming attached to their own body as well. Nagarjuna wants us to really consider what it is that we are so attached to, that we are ones who impute those qualities that are not really there on ourselves and others, and then we blame the other person when we come to our senses.
So our Dharma practice is aimed at seeking higher and a more reliable peace and happiness. Attachment and craving for sensual pleasure is an obstacle that prevents attaining either of these. So that's kind of the bottom line, it seems like to me. And I thought it was kind of interesting when I did these meditations on the foulness of the body. It seemed so extreme and like, there was such resistance, and I thought, what, And then it dawned on me that my reaction was because my view is so distorted. That's why. It isn't, because when you do this over and over again, it's like, well, yeah, of course that's what it is. So it's my view that was so distorted. That's why it was like, whoa, And of course, too, we usually see our bodies as what? Solid, permanent, real. Yeah, and, attached to and looking at the superficial, like you said, Rebecca, We don't look deeply at the nature of the body. There's so much resistance to do that because of our conditioning. And so when explaining mindfulness of the body and the Sutta of the establishments of mindfulness, the Buddha detailed mindfulness of the 4 physical postures, so lying, standing, sitting, walking, and then the breath, then the foulness of the body, the elements, and then the 9 charnel ground contemplations. And so then that leads us into question 10, describe the meditation on the foulness of the body. So again, like people have said, the meditation on the reality of what this body is done to decrease and eliminate sensual desire. It's not making a value judgment about sexual relationships. It's not saying the body is evil or sinful, which in this country it's easy to fall into because we're conditioned to that through the Christian way of thinking about things. It just seeks to reduce undue obsession with our own or others' bodies, helps us to have a healthier mental relationship with our body. And so the meditation session generally begins with some mindfulness of the breath to calm the mind. And then we continue with mindfulness of the various parts of the body. If we do it with our own body, that it's called contemplating the body internally. And if we do it focused on the bodies of others, then that's contemplating the body externally. And through this, then the nature of the body will become apparent. We'll balance our view out and see clearly what we're dealing with. And so traditionally, when one does these meditations, the body is divided into 32 parts. The Buddha mentioned 31 parts of the body to be mindful of, and then the brain was later added to make 32. And so the 32 parts of the body are broken into six groups as follows. The first is the skin pentad, and that just means the group of 5. So the skin group of 5 is head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, and skin. The kidney pentan is muscles, tendons, bones, marrow, kidney. Lungs pentad is heart, liver, connective tissue, spleen, and lungs. The brain pentad, intestines, mesentery, gorge, which is the contents of the stomach, feces, and brain. The fat pentad is bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat. And the urine pentad is tears, grease, spit, snot, oil of the joints, and urine. So this covers the body, all the parts. So to begin with, we just focus our mindfulness on the first 5 parts: head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, and skin. And these are the ones that we focus on because they're so conspicuous. That's when we meet a person, that's what comes into our senses. That's what we see. And, what do we do with those parts? We decorate them, we try to improve them, we change our hair color or whiten our teeth, all the different things. Try to take care of the bad hair days we had over and over again. All these different things. And so you can see, if you just even focus on those first 5, everything in the body, all the parts can be found between the head on the hair and the nails on the toes. And so the masters recommend that we recite them slowly and so that you don't skim over the qualities, but you really pay attention to what you're saying and what you're meditating on. And after we become familiar with the meditation, then just saying the names verbally or mentally makes the awareness of the unattractiveness of that part arise in the mind. And then, after a while, you just, hardly have to bring it to mind, and, you kind of balance out your mind a bit. And again, the aim is to lessen sexual desire from others' bodies and to eliminate the thought that taking another body in samsara is desirable. And that is pretty important, And of course, it really counters the conditioning we get, especially from the media, the body beautiful, all the pictures and magazines and whatever of all these beautiful people that how can we be like that? And, we compare ourselves to that. Just brings so much pain and misery. And so our self-esteem, is a much better basis to work from than this superficial stuff that we're conditioned to look at. Because this superficial stuff, what happens to it? Yeah, it falls, doesn't it? It wrinkles, it falls. It cracks, it breaks, and then we die. So it is not reliable. So let's do a little brief meditation so that we can get a sense of what this is. So bring someone to mind that you think is beautiful or handsome. Doesn't have to be anybody you're attracted to necessarily, personally, but somebody that when you bring them to mind, oh yeah, they're beautiful, or oh yeah, they're handsome. And then settle in meditation posture, close your eyes. And so we'll just do the first 5 parts and we'll focus on them slowly. And try to keep in mind observing the color, shape, texture, location in the body, surrounding organs. And when we say the name of the body part, we're not thinking in an abstract way. We locate it in the body that we've brought to mind. This is their body, what I call their body. And it's just a collection of these unattractive parts. So first is head hair. So focus your attention on this person you've brought to mind, on their hair on their head. Is it in itself beautiful? When you think of the hair alone, separate from the rest of the body, does it appear lovely? Hair is so visible and present to our minds, it's easy to see the changes that take place in hair day by day, year by year. Over the years, the dark brown or black or blonde hair turns gray or white or falls out. We can see how quickly our attitude toward hair shifts depending on where it is. Does it make sense to be proud of hair on the head, given that we throw out a whole bowl of soup if one hair falls into it? Then we move to body hair. Similarly, very changeable. So think of any body hair anywhere, and then remove it from the body and put it out on the table. Anything attractive to that? So hair is just hair, wherever on the body it is or isn't. It has no intrinsic meaning. The hair on the body is not theirs. It is not them, not themselves. It is as impermanent as everything else in their body and mind. It vanishes. It is empty. Now we move to the nails. As long as nails are on their fingers and toes, they may be attractive. Some people decorate them colorfully. Nails are useful to protect. But once again now, let's remove them from the body and put them out on the table. Toenail clippings, fingernails. Young, strong, and healthy nails become old, yellowed, and brittle as they age. Nails can be full of fungus. We can have ingrown toenails. Other conditions that are a source of pain and suffering. So when we think about them this way, we recognize they are impermanent and unsatisfactory. Now we move to teeth. Now, teeth are more useful than head hair, body hair, and nails. You see people smiling and they have white, straight teeth. Seems pretty attractive. How about when they're 80 years old? And they become brittle, maybe filled with decay, yellowed, needing to be pulled. And then once a tooth comes out, no matter how useful, strong, or beautiful it was, it isn't anymore. Like every other part of the body, teeth are impermanent and unsatisfactory. Now to skin. Skin can be a sign of beauty, often only if it is a certain color and is unwrinkled. Again, consider the skin of the person you are attracted to or who you think is beautiful or handsome. Now fast forward 40 years. Now what will the skin look like? Is it attractive? Again, considering these points, we conclude, like every other part of the body, skin is neither beautiful nor ugly. It is useful, but also a cause of suffering. It is impermanent and unsatisfactory. So how did that affect your mind?
And it just kind of makes me feel a bit like, so silly, like kind of laughing at myself of, it's like, so what am I really attracted to? It kind of really puts the question back of, especially when it's just kind of looking at it in isolation, it's just like, it's quite clear that there's nothing really there.
I think it makes me aware of how much I impute the self on those pieces. And that's how I identify myself and how I identify other selves is by these parts. So as you took them off, I mean, there was really no self there. Mm-hmm. So it's really to get that reification really quite loosened by doing that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's Venerable Tarpa in the past when we've talked about this. She says that, when you dismantle yourself or another and put all the parts out there, it's like, ugh. But at the moment you kind of put it all back, it's like, boop, Like, oh yeah, there it is. There's that attractive thing. It's very curious. Yeah. Melissa?
With this first grouping, I don't find it as quite as gross as the later ones.
Uh-huh.
And so sometimes I really concentrate on how these things can all be a source of quite a bit of pain.
Mm-hmm.
Like if your hair is pulled or your nails or your teeth can be excruciating and the skin is full of nerve endings, you know. And I also think about how, as you said, it's what we see and what it hides.
Yeah.
Yes, because
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
go
what
through
it
this in
hides. Yeah.
order and
Yeah. 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 I mean, just think about taking all the skin off and piling it over here, you know. Ugh.
I hear again and again from people who've been practicing a long time to a short time that this meditation just doesn't work for them.
Mm.
That they see an attractive person, it's like
Mm.
kaboom.
Mm-hmm.
But Nagarjuna addresses this too. And in the commentary, he says, you know, during the meditation session, you'll know the body for what it is, foul. But after the meditation session, it may still look beautiful to you due to the strength of our attachment to it.
Yeah.
But, and this is where I think the but is for all of us who say this doesn't work,
Uh-huh.
we don't do it often enough.
Yeah.
So he says,
Yeah.
as you repeatedly meditate on the foulness of the body, your attachment will gradually lessen and your wisdom will increase. Even though you won't be able to completely free yourself from attachment immediately, you will be able to overcome the more manifest forms of lust. So I think it's just the case of we don't really want to do it, so we do it every now and then.
Yeah.
Kind of what I was talking about last Friday.
Yeah.
The every now and then
Thing.
meditation.
Yeah. 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 And it's just a function of how we're conditioned since, you know, I don't know, beginningless time. So it's in there so deep. Yeah.
It seems like, and I don't know, I haven't, I'll have to look at the text later, but for people listening, I'm just a guest right now, but I'm struck by when I see someone, often with a certain appearance, that it seems like just in my daily life that people who look a certain way, often I'll associate a quality with that. For example, people who I see as female who have a lot of estrogen in their body, I might correlate that with qualities that are considered feminine. And I think of how even in the iconography, in Buddhist iconography, like behind you, there's this association of gentleness and love with these round faces, like Jizo in Japanese, like Jizo Ka, like Jizo Chirobuk face. I was thinking it's interesting how, like why, on the one hand, it's like we're trying to see through this, and yet it'd be interesting to have more statues of Buddhas where they look kind of awkward but still have that radiance, and I was thinking like why aren't there more statues with, maybe there's that one with the Buddha as the aesthetic with the really like narrow face,
Yeah.
but I was thinking how often when I see people with narrower faces, that seems to correlate with more testosterone and things that I push back against. But I guess that's what just came up for me talking about this, is that sense of how do you separate that quality of love from just like chemicals in the body that make you look a certain way. And sorry, just one other thought was I'm blanking out.
Okay. Well, let me just have a comment to that. So I think that we have to be very clear about what the purpose of this meditation is. And it's a different purpose than when we look at the images of the Buddha. You know, that brings connection, reminds us of refuge, reminds us of our potential. So that has a different function than when we do these meditations. It is so that we can see ourselves and others clearly, so that we don't relate being clouded over with attachment, which is only going to bring suffering. Yeah. And, yeah. So two different things we're dealing with, I think.
Yeah. And I guess my other question was about, maybe this comes up later, I just have to look at the book, but how Nagarjuna deals with that feeling of like a connection with a particular person. Like it could just be a very deep friendship, but that could be an attachment. But it seems like often so much of love is even that quality aside from the body. But maybe that's aside from what we're dealing with now. Maybe that's part of the remainder of what draws people. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, attachment comes in many different forms. This
Yeah.
is just speaking about this particular attachment
Okay.
to, our own or others' bodies. But of course, we have attachment to qualities and to,
Yeah.
many other different, millions of different things, in another person,
Thank you.
So, yeah. So let's just do a little bit of considering how the foulness of our own body affects us. So again, let's go through a little meditation looking at our own body. So again, meditation posture, close your eyes. And when I say the name of the part, again, we don't think in an abstract way. We locate it in our own body. Become aware of it. That it is inside of us or on the surface, or some of both, actually. So again, we can start with head hair. What it is made of. Again, if we take our own hair and think about putting it out on the table in front of us, for those of you that have hair in this room. But, you could do eyebrows, body hair. Hair is just hair, wherever on the body it is or isn't. It has no intrinsic meaning. Moreover, the hair on the body is not mine. It is not I, and not myself. It is as impermanent as everything else in the body and mind. It vanishes. It is empty. Now think about the nails, the parts that we can see, and then the part that's underneath the skin, the root of the nail. Now think about finger and toenail clippings on the table. Think about fingernails that collect dirt when we work with our hands. The dead skin that we scratch from our head, from the soles of our feet, or our ears. When the nails get diseased or they get ripped off, pain and suffering. They are impermanent and unsatisfactory. They are not I and not myself. And now think about your teeth in your mouth. We're happy when they're strong and healthy. They can make us very unhappy. Recall the last time you sat in the dentist chair to have a tooth pulled. Like every other part of the body, teeth are impermanent, unsatisfactory. Though it was once in my mouth, ye tooth is not myself. Skin. Can be very helpful, gives us a lot of information we receive through the skin. Hardness, softness, roughness, smoothness, because of touch, information. Skin regulates body temperature. When we're hot, the skin expands, body cools itself through perspiration that pours through the skin. The skin is a source of suffering. Rashes and other skin diseases make us very uncomfortable. Blisters, abrasions. No matter what we do, the skin wrinkles, sags, darkens as we age. Every day our skin dries up and dies. Ordinary house dust is full of dead skin. Like every other part of the body, skin is neither beautiful nor ugly. It is useful, but also a cause of suffering. It is therefore impermanent and unsatisfactory. It is not mine. I am not this. This is not myself. So how did that one land as you did it? Bring up anything? Any reactions or feelings about that?
This meditation is really important for someone like me who has always seen her body as something that's a strong identity place for me. It's always been healthy and strong and active. And so as I get older, as long as I see myself, usually the part of the body being a big part of who I am, as it gets older and loses its vitality and its strength, there is a sense of failure. There's a sense of disappointment. There's a sense of that is somehow affecting who I am as a person. So when I can get this myself away from that identification, which this meditation helps a little bit with, then as the body declines, Semke isn't declining. You know, there's another, that self isn't this body that's falling apart. But there's a lot of resistance because I can't stop the aging, so I have to do something with the mind because it's not like I can hit pause and say, I don't want to do this. Can I just stay right where I am? You know?
Or go back.
Or go, rewind about 10 years. So, so it's really helpful for me to loosen up my identity of this body being. Semke.
The more that we are disconnected from the impermanence of this body, the deeper the pain and suffering is as we age, without a doubt. So it really is a kindness to work with this so that we get clear about our changes and our impermanence. And it's helpful to look, especially those of you in the room that are older, when you think about yourself kind of in your mind's eye. What's that picture? Is it the picture that's in the mirror? Usually not, is it? What picture is it? You know, what age? So that shows how distorted we are, you know? And it's just suffering when we hold on to that.
Yeah, there's some comments online. I have a hard time with this meditation. I am married and see my spouse is aging as beautiful, even he's getting older. And another comment is, I think this is more appropriate for monastics.
Oh, yeah.
Another comment is I used to glorify the body a lot, but have found these meditations incredibly helpful in overcoming that. It was difficult for me to listen to these meditations at first, but when I saw how effective they were at overcoming my glorification of the body, now I actually like doing them.
Ah, yeah. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that's important to realize that doing this once isn't going to do much of anything if you've never done it other than maybe aversion, you know. So, yeah. Rebecca.
I was part of a Dharma book group once, book club,
Uh-huh.
and the topic of the foulness of the body came up, and I remember a couple of people there kind of associated that more with the Theravada tradition of being quite strict and harsh about the body, and saying, "Oh, we, you know, with the on the Bodhisattva path, that this focus on the body, the foulness of the body, isn't necessary. We don't need to do that." And also with the saying that with the practice of Tantra, that you don't need that either, because we're not viewing the body in that way. So that was quite
Interesting.
not really seeing the point of the meditation and getting
Yeah. And I think that just brings up that idea about we go from one extreme to the other. If I do this, then, I have to hate my body or, and it's not that at all. It's just seeing it as it is. Yeah.
The other tragedy which continues to grow is people who have financial means and no spiritual practice. Then they go to their friendly dermatologist and they start the whole regime of facelifts or
Botox,
whatever things they can inject. And it's profoundly sad because, so you might look good for a little bit, but then that sags, and then there's this perpetual, I'm sure, obsession with, dealing with the next wrinkle or sag that comes up. And as I was thinking about this just now, I'm thinking that I'm really wondering about the doctors who do this, and is this even right livelihood? Because they're interfering with something that's just natural, and they're actually a participant in the mental suffering that's going on. That's just my personal opinion. Question.
It's such a narrow view when you get hooked up into that whole thing. It's such a narrow view, and it brings such suffering. So the purpose of contemplating this, in practical terms, meditation on the body parts and elements opens the mind to accepting our body as it is right now, without our usual emotional reactions. That is helpful. It helps us overcome pride or self-hatred, and regarding our body with some equanimity. The Buddha gave an example to illustrate this point. Suppose there is a bag full of different types of grain: rice, hill rice, paddy rice, lentils, green peas, barley, sesame seed, and mustard seed. When a man with good eyesight looks into the bag, he identifies the various grains, saying, "This is rice, hill rice, paddy rice, lentils, green peas, barley, sesame seed, and mustard seed." He does not say, "This is barley, I hate barley," nor does he say, "This is sesame seed, I love sesame seed." So again, to just bring a balanced view of what this is. It's useful. This is how we can practice because we have this body, but it is deteriorating moment by moment as we speak. And if we can keep track of that and be aware of that, then at our time of death, we won't be freaked out. We can use our mind then and prepare ourselves for our next life. That's pretty useful, I think. Pretty useful. So let's go to next question. how can you give up making others afraid, not just of your killing and eating them, but in other ways too? What can you do to make others happy? So what verse is this one referencing? 171 I had. Yeah. So that is, it says, hunting is the terrible cause of a short life, fear and suffering, and also rebirth in the hells. Therefore, always firmly refrain from killing. So this one, when I read this one is quite scary, actually, I think. It really wakes me up. I'll say it that way. So killing brings a ripening result as well as two types of results similar to the cause. The ripening result from killing is rebirth in the lower realms. Should you finally manage to find freedom from lower realms and to be born as a human being, you have to experience the results similar to the cause in terms of your experience. You will have a short life, encounter terrifying situations, and be fearful, sometimes for no reason. The result similar to the cause in terms of your habitual behavior is being attracted to killing and actually killing others again. So it's important, I think, when we hear this not to freak out. We have to always remember, probably it's a rare one that hasn't killed something. But in this tradition, we have our purification practice. So, we purify. And so then that transforms the results. And I also was thinking about just my own experience being raised of a family of hunters and meat eaters. That's where I came from. And the process of that change over time, it's not something that happens quickly. And we are so conditioned in this culture to desensitize ourselves from what we are doing, When we personalize what we're putting in our mouth, when we attach what it is we're putting in our mouth to the body it came from, in my experience, I cannot open my mouth and put it in there anymore. And so that's a process. And if we just think about ourselves, if somebody was going after me to kill me, to eat me, what would that mind be like? That would be so terrifying, And we don't want to hear this. When I first started, getting these teachings, it was like, la, 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 I don't want to hear it. But if we just open up a little bit to what actually we're doing, it's helpful. It's helpful. Because when I ate meat, I was unconscious, I was unconscious. And now I'm not unconscious anymore. And I think my compassion has grown. I think eating things that have been killed is a detriment to me growing my compassion to its fullest. I don't know. And this is tricky. I'm not being judgmental here. I'm talking more about what the experience has done to my heart, I think. And it's a process. And I ate meat for many, many years, so I'm not some goody, two-shoes person here. That's not what I'm trying to communicate at all. I hope that's not what's coming through. That's not what I'm meaning. But I think just to be awake to what we're doing is important. Our actions have consequences. It's important.
There are varying numbers of how much percentage global warming is due to animal farming.
Yeah.
And it's quite a range, anything from like in the teens to 50%. And so I love the way His Holiness approaches this, which is to say, you know, if you can be vegetarian, that's best. But if you need meat, if you want to eat meat, then eat less. And I think that's a very sensible approach. It doesn't have to be either or.
Yeah.
But just raising our awareness and then
Yeah.
consciously choosing to be vegetarian one day a week or 2 days a week
Yeah.
or something like that can
Yep.
really help us to
Yep.
bring that change
Yeah.
about slowly and carefully.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's a good reminder. And that's how it works for most of us. We didn't just one day wake up and, okay, now I'm a vegetarian, I don't think. Who did that? It's a process. Yeah. Yeah, then we'll listen.
When I stopped killing, I really noticed the difference on my mind because mostly with the mosquitoes,
Uh-huh.
I would go through the house in the evening before going to sleep and find the mosquitoes and take them outside.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and just let them land on my hand and walk out and blow them off.
Yeah.
And I just really thought about how that was making my mind more gentle, because in the past I had responded to something that was annoying with fatal violence.
Yeah.
I would just,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and so even though I used to kill fish and chickens, deer, ducks. It's really dealing with the mosquitoes that I really saw that, because I was able to.
Yeah.
I was still interacting with them where
Yeah.
I wasn't interacting with the deer in the same
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, it's like it's up close and personal. Here it is right here. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
For myself, where I was disconnected is seeing animals as beings, that they have feelings, that, I heard somebody one time said that those animals are put on earth for us to eat. But then when, having cats, having dogs and horses, you see that they have feeling, they care for you. So it really changed my my view on animals,
Yeah.
on eating. And also, I did share that before, but I had an experience of, I used to love shrimps, right? And one day I was craving that taste. And it came to my mind, I said, just for you to feel that craving, you'll accept that animals are killed for your craving, that taste that you look for. That really, that was it. I never had it. That was it for me.
Yeah.
Because my desire, I would accept that somebody's being killed just to feel that.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a somewhat similar experience as Venerable Yeshe, except that I had met the Dharma. I was in Seattle, and I had given up meat, I'd given up fish, but I was still doing my occasional chicken. And I was driving up, I think it was 5, I don't know, up there in Seattle somewhere, and this big semi came up, and it was filled with cages. And inside of those cages, each one of those cages was a whole bunch of chickens that were going someplace. And it slowed down because we had some traffic, and it was on my side. And so that I was looking out my window to about the bottom level of those chickens. And, me and my chicken wings and whatever. And here are these little chickens with their legs hanging out the cages, most of them not having any hair on them, just listless, their heads kind of bent, and the suffering.
Yeah.
And basically the same thought as Venerable Yeshe said.
Yeah.
They're going someplace to be slaughtered so you can have your chicken wings tomorrow night.
Yeah. Yeah.
What the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
What nerve, what arrogance, what delusion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And ever since that day when I sat there in that car looking at those little chickens, that was it. So I think it's this personal experience to see the sentiency of these beings.
Yeah.
And the craving
Yep.
that really doesn't care.
Yep.
you know.
And then, too, I think the important thing, like Venerable Losang said, when we are trying to protect life, I don't know how many times in the meditation hall a fly falls in the water bowls and drowning, and I stand up and, and how that feels in the heart when I am, when I've been in places where I've almost drowned. I know what that feels like. It's not so wonderful. So that I could help and protect that fly from that terror, that feels pretty okay. That feels pretty okay.
Yeah, there's one comment online.
Uh-huh.
Many years ago, I just came to a place where I could no longer put meat in my mouth. I felt like I was eating a person.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. You were. Yeah. Ellie?
I have a question about how this relates to dairy, and I've talked with different people about being vegan versus being vegetarian, and I guess I've gone in different directions. I think I'm, maybe someday I'll become vegan. I think partly I try not to make life too difficult for people cooking in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's but there's that question of, with a lot of things. I guess with dairy, like with yogurt, with eggs, I think of where that comes from, and I guess I've been trying to treat it as something really special and try to say a prayer for the animal whom it came from. But I've been wondering, at what point, even with gathering lettuce, bugs can get killed, and so there's there's a need to take responsibility for that. And I've been wondering how, could be a question for you to answer or an open question, just how does one take responsibility for all of that? Where is the line between comfort versus possible suffering that you can't see, or you don't know how the cow is being treated, but sometimes you do. So maybe you look at the label of where it comes from. I don't know.
Yeah. I think everybody has to answer that question for themselves, I guess. For me personally, if I get too tight with things, then I'm not so kind to myself, and I'm really not practicing very well. So, there's so many, here, there's so many things. I have stepped on worms and killed them before here. It isn't my intention to do that, but, that's what happens. I have to make some space for that somehow, because I'm an imperfect being and these things happen, So I think we have to put some balance to this a bit, so that we don't get so tight with everything. Yeah. Damcho.
Oh, I wanted to, if this is not related to meat eating, I just wanted to respond to the broader part of the question too, that the first thing that came to my mind was just taking and keeping precepts. I think is a great way to give fearlessness to others, because they know they can trust us not to steal their stuff and so on. And I guess also working hard to be consistent. So people kind of know what to expect. You're not going to be happy one day and yelling at them the next. And so that's what came to mind for me. And also, in my own experience, how I felt I caused fear to people was promising to do things and not showing up. And then people never quite know if you're going to come through. And that's a kind of fear. So trying to do the opposite.
Yeah. So this whole idea about how to, create happiness, we have to start where we are and, use ethics and bodhicitta, I think, and try to do what we can do from where we're at. And I think, at least in the West here, it's important, I think, to recognize when we are doing virtuous actions. I don't think we acknowledge that to ourselves very often. We're so stuck on all the things we didn't do quite right and all, but I think it's helpful to, not in an ego way, but just, this came from as pure a place as it could, and I had a good intention, and I followed through with it, and I did it. And it didn't harm, and maybe it helped. That's okay to acknowledge. I think if we don't acknowledge that, we can stay stuck in the past idea of who we are, and we don't grow ourselves up to where we are now, because we change all the time and our capacity grows. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that. Well, we've used our time. Any final comments before we dedicate? Okay, thank you so much.